morning. Today we are going to talk about cell-free biomimetic mineralization of enamel. We know compositionally dentin and cementum are hydrated tissues where we see in dentin there is 72% inorganic content, 20% organics and 8% water, whereas in cementum we have 45 to 50% of inorganics and 50 to 55% of organics and water. But enamel, which is the hardest and the most highly mineralized hard tissue in the human body, consists of 96% of hydroxyapatite and 4% of water and organics. So this says that enamel is less hydrated than the dentin and the cementum. So enamel is classified as an acellular tissue and it cannot self-absorb or remodel, therefore the damage is irreversible. Remineralization of the superficial dental tissue is a widely used non-invasive therapeutic technique. So when there is an enamel damage as an incipient caries, we can try remineralizing this dental tissue, that is the enamel, by using supersaturated solutions of calcium and phosphate. As I discussed in mineral metabolism, when there is a supersaturated calcium and phosphate, there is a process of the minerals getting deposited. Like that, we can use the supersaturated solutions of calcium and phosphate, such as casein phosphopeptide amorphous calcium phosphate, which is CPP-ACP, or fluoride varnish or gels, which can be used for remineralization in clinical dentistry. So this is the one of the common techniques used to remineralize the incipient or early caries, where there is enamel loss. These agents promote enamel remineralization and are protective against dental caries, but unfortunately they do not integrate into the enamel microstructure and are unable to fully restore the dental enamel. So the enamel which is formed by the solutions like this are not able to integrate with the natural enamel which is already present. This is a drawback here. So what can we do? We can regenerate enamel-like structure. How do we regenerate? There are two methods. One is the conventional synthetic approach and another one is a biomineralization. So in conventional synthetic approach, they use specialized conditions such as high temperature, high pressure or extremely acidic pH. We will talk about this later. They use these three methodologies to synthesize the enamel. So examples of such work include calcium phosphate paste containing hydrogen peroxide, or a hydrothermal method with controlled release of calcium from calcium EDTA, the hydrothermal transformation of octacalcium phosphate rods into hydroxyapatite nanorods in the presence of gelatin and electrolytic deposition at 85 degrees C. So these many steps have to be followed in the conventional method, and all these methods are considered impractical at scale and cannot be translated in the clinical setting. So in the clinical setting, we cannot have any control on each and every step here, so that the enamel which is formed is of good quality. So clinical translation is very difficult in conventional synthetic approaches. And what about biomineralization? So this is inspired by the biomineralization process occurring in the native organisms. Scientists in the field of material chemistry have adopted ideas from the nature to synthesize biomaterials with desirable structures. So from nature we derive the mechanisms and then try to replicate it. Biomineralization in organism involves a complex inorganic precipitation process which is precisely regulated by the organic matrices. So here we know the organic matrices are very important for the inorganic precipitation, so which is consisting mainly of proteins. The organic matrices contain proteins. So during biomineralization process, the organic matrices are used as a template to mediate the nucleation and growth of inorganic crystal structures, resulting in various morphologies, sizes, orientations and assemblies. It is not just precipitation of the minerals, it has to be arranged in a particular manner for getting the proper strength and the properties of the native material. And positive ion, these are the types of biomimetic strategies which are used, which is positive ion selective membrane, direct calcium phosphate solution paste or solution or paste for mineralization, electrolytic precipitation, protein or peptide induced mineralization and non-protein induced mineralization. So these are the types of biomimetic strategies. So now that we know enamel is the hardest tissue, the remineralization is not of good quality, and there are many biomineralization methods for regenerating enamel-like structure. Now we will see the basic structure of enamel. So enamel has excellent biomechanical properties attributed to its hierarchically organized structures at multiple levels. So why is enamel so hard? It is not because of the hydroxyapatite crystals. It is the way they are arranged. That is the hierarchical organization, which is the main property of enamel, which makes it more harder. Reproducing the unique dental prism structure of enamel is key in developing effective remineralization methods for treating dental lesions. So composed of repeating units of tightly packed prisms, each prism is 4 to 8 micrometer diameter and composed of hydroxyapatite crystals bundled in parallel with one another. So we can see the cross section here. So cross section of each crystal is 25 to 100 nanometer and undetermined length of 100 nanometer to 100 micrometer or larger along the C-axis. So what is C-axis? Any mineral is measured in 3 axes, A, B and C. A, B are the axis which measures the length and breadth, so the height and the breadth, where the C axis it measures the total length, how long the mineral is formed, that is the C axis. So any mineral has to be judged according to the C axis of that deposition. And what do we learn from the enamel formations? First, we should know how the enamel is formed naturally, and then only we can mimic it. That is why it is called biomimetics. So we have to mimic the enamel formation from its natural method. So when we see the process of amelogenesis, enamel formation initiates at the dentino-enamel junction and undergoes the stages like organic matrix secretion, crystal nucleation, crystal elongation and enamel protein removal. So the protein which is there, which helps in the formation of the crystal, has to be removed at last. So these are the steps of enamel formation. And here we see the ameloblast, the Tom's process, the day it deposits, and we can see the yellow dots here. These are the proteinases which removes the that organic matrix once the enamel crystals are formed. So this is how the deposition happens during the amelogenesis. So during the secretory stage, the ameloblasts differentiate into tall secretory cells which track along a cellular extension called Tom's process in order to secrete the enamel matrix. So it forms the Tom's process and deposits the enamel matrix. Then it attracts the calcium and phosphate, nucleates it, and then crystallizes it. The extracellular matrix contains enamel matrix proteins and proteinases. So proteinases are enzymes which are used to remove the matrix proteins, and the matrix proteins are the base. So when we see the ameloblasts, initially they have the enamel matrix proteins here, and slowly as the enamel rod elongates, the matrix, the proteinases remove the organic matrix, and only the crystallized structure is arranged. So talking about enamel matrix protein, which is the main part which helps in the nucleation formation of enamel. It is divided into amelogenin protein and a hydrophilic non-amelogenin protein. Non-amelogenin protein contains ameloblastin, enamelin, ductil. So talking about amelogenin, the mechanism of amelogenin mediated biomineralization come to pre-nucleation clusters into organized structure. There are 6 phases here. The first phase, we see the blue color one, these are the amelogenin monomers. And these are the calcium, the full length amelogenin monomers and mineral ions. Here the mineral ions and amelogenin monomers are there. The next phase 2 is amelogenin oligomers and mineral pre-nucleation clusters. So they form, from monomers they go to oligomers, and the mineral crystals they form pre-nucleation clusters. They form the clusters. And in phase 3 what happens? Amelogenin calcium phosphate composites, they form together. They are separate, now they form a complex here. And then in phase 4 they elongate and they increase. This is the C axis. So it increases in the C axis. In phase 5 they arrange themselves in parallel manner, and later they start the formation of the crystallization and they form the rods of the enamel. So they are not only forming, they have to arrange themselves parallelly to form that prismatic structure of enamel. And ameloblastin initiates crystal formation by C terminus. So this is the ameloblastin protein, where we have the C terminal and the N terminal. In the C terminal, the ameloblastin initiates the crystal formation, which have high affinity towards calcium ion. Why the crystal formation starts in C terminal? The reason is it has high affinity to calcium ions, and that is promoting calcium phosphate deposition. Meanwhile, it induces the formation of prismatic structures by regulating the assembly of amelogenin molecules into an organized structure. So this protein, which is a non-amelogenin, helps in the amelogenin protein to be arranged, to get themselves arranged in parallel manner. And the enamelin is also a non-amyloidin protein which regulates the conformation, transformation and assembly of unfolded amylogenin. So each and every protein here helps each other to do their proper function via interactions between glycosylated sites of enamelin and the tyrosyl-rich N-terminal region of amylogenin. So each protein has particular region where one region has a particular function towards the other protein. And daptalin is an acidic phosphorylated glycoprotein which is implicated in Claris susceptibility. So this plays an important role. This was degraded during the Claris formation. And what is the functional role of proteinases? As I already mentioned, it has to remove the matrix once the enamel crystals are formed. So proteinases regulate in the sense it has to control whether to form or remove or not. The assembly of enamel matrix proteins decreases the protein appetite binding affinity and inhibit the protein occlusion within the formed enamel crystal. So when the enamel crystal is formed, the proteins should not be occluded in between the crystals. So it has to take care, go remove that protein and contribute to the high degree of crystallization. So these enzymes also play a very important role in the enamel formation. And there are metalloproteinases 20 and serine protein kallikrein KLK4 which represent the two major enamel proteinases. So the names of proteinases are MMP20 and KLK4. This is what I said. So when it is forming the enamel crystals along with the organic matrix, and slowly it has to be removed. This enzyme should act and remove the organic matrix and leave only the organized crystals there. So this is how the natural formation of enamel happens. Now how to we mimic this property? There are a few studies which have tried mimicking the enamel formation. So here the calcium and the phosphate ions are transported from the amyloblast layer into the gel-like enamel extracellular matrix during enamel formation. And once the full extension of enamel crystal terminates, amyloblasts transform into shortened height and lose their Thom's process. So Ujima et al. They developed a cation selective membrane system. So this cation selective membrane system is a membrane which is more attractive towards the cations, which will mimic the growth environment during amylogenesis. So when we know the amylogenesis, we can try mimicking the same process in the laboratory. Here they had a one-directional calcium supply. Since it was a selective membrane, it allowed the movement of calcium in only one direction. So cation selective membrane separates the calcium reactant solution on one side from a phosphate reactant on the other side. So the membrane is composed of styrene butadiene copolymer containing SO3 functional groups and controls the direction of calcium transport in the phosphate compartment. And compared to crystals formed in the solution, crystals grown on the cation membrane are longer in the C-axis direction and display a parallel and organized orientation. So when we just keep the calcium and phosphate in as a solution together, it will also precipitate, it will also crystallize. But compared to that crystals, the formation of crystals with the cation membrane was more efficient. And they added a hydrogel matrix on this membrane. So they tried only with the membrane, cation specific membrane, then they added a hydrogel. They all added a polyacrylamide gel to the phosphate side of the cationic selective membrane, and they observed that compared to the growth of broad flat-like crystals in the gel-free membrane, narrow elongated plate-like crystals were synthesized using a 5% gel-coated membrane. And then next they attributes changed, like calcium and phosphate ionic inflow was changed and the pH value was changed. So crystals growing in a cation selective membrane have an increased length to width ratio, decreased width to thickness ratio and increased calcium and phosphate concentrations. And the crystal grows using membranes with low pH values and phosphate concentration show preferential growth in the C-axis direction. So always the growth of a crystal is analyzed using the C-axis. The pH of the extracellular matrix is maintained with a dynamic range during amylogenesis. Normally, what happens during amylogenesis that regarding the pH? The pH is neutral, which is 7.2 during the secretory stage, and during the crystal nucleation, during the early stage of crystal formation, there is a hydrogen byproduct formation, which lowers the pH, so it becomes a little acidic. And during the later stages of maturation, the enamel extracellular pH values rise above the neutral. So this is the pH variation during amelogenesis. And